Hey, what's up everybody? Video 44 coming at you with another video. I'm kind of frustrated because I want to do the videos that I'm supposed to be making, which are two prediction videos, one for the OKC Suns matchup versus, and the other being the Orlando and Detroit matchup. But I need my other phone in order to be as effective with that video as I want to be. And while I probably can use my phone, I have it with me. I don't want to be walking down the street with two phones. That's not a good look. Gotta keep your eye on the swivel, especially in this neighborhood. So, head on the swivel rather. And then there's another video I'd like to make, but it's the same dynamic. I did two more homework sessions on prospects that are coming up in the draft. One of which I really like a lot. The other which I think could be really intriguing as well, but same dynamic. I need the phone for that. I'm not about to pull out two phones. Walking down the street like that, that's not about to happen. So I guess I'll wait to make those. So yeah, kind of just wanted to give y'all overall basketball talk. Whatever comes out comes out. So I did not get a chance, of course, to see the games that are taking place right now. Timberwolves and the Denver Nuggets. Last I checked, Denver was down by 10, but they were shooting like 27% from the field, and Minnesota was shooting like 57%. That's not an indicator that I expect to continue. I don't think that behavior it remains throughout the course of the series. If it does, Denver will be going home in 4, and I don't expect that. Check out my video on that series for my prediction, but it definitely don't have anything to do with Minnesota shooting 50% and Denver shooting 27% for the rest of the series. I can tell you that. And then there was the game with the Toronto Raptors and the Cavaliers. I didn't get a chance to see that at all either, but I did check out the stats on that. And what I took from it, if I'm being honest with you guys, is just I'm not really sure if I'm loving what I'm seeing from the Toronto coach as it pertains to how he's using that roster. I ain't really sure, man. I'm not watching their team like that. Obviously, they're in 6th place, so they had to be doing a lot right this year in order for them to be in this position. They got a pretty solid roster, but I'm not really sure if from afar I'm agreeing with the vision as it pertains to how he's using that roster. The shooting guard position specifically, I ain't really sure if I agree with benching Grady, giving him 2 minutes in this playoff game, and then playing, I think it was Jacoby Walter, 27 minutes to get like 2 points or 3. I don't. Not really sure if I'm seeing the vision there as pertains to how he's using his roster. No Trace Jackson Davis minutes. A little weird to me. A little weird how he's using that roster. And I just think it comes down to shot making. Just like I said, Donovan Mitchell and James Harden, it's going to be a little tough trying to accomplish beating those people because they're so incredible shot makers. They're such high-level stars that are likely going to get to the line a million times. And I think that's what this is going to come down to for this series. They just don't have that type of draw on Toronto's side of things. Scotty expected to get his calls. You would expect that RJ can get to the line some. You would expect that, B.I. can get to the line. But not nearly as much as you expect for James Harden and Donovan Mitchell. They're gonna get their calls. And so that's when it becomes a situation where I'm wondering if it's gonna work out for Toronto with that dynamic in place. Especially when you couple with some of the choices that the Toronto Raptors coach is making with the roster, which to me just don't look like he's getting the most out of it. I could be wrong. It could be a lot of different variables to why that is the case, why he chooses what he does. I don't watch their team, so what do I know, right? But as somebody who's done some homework on these individual players, what it is that I would expect they would be able to do versus what it is that he's allowing to take place with the minutes and stuff, it's just not really what I'm thinking probably makes sense from my scope. So that's what I'm saying to y'all. Toronto may have a little bit of a coaching issue. Don't know. So that's just something I'm throwing out there. Yeah, I harken back to Charlotte because I was listening. Actually, I didn't get a chance to listen to it. I read an excerpt of what was said out of context by LaMelo Ball, essentially saying that he felt his team was running too many plays and he should have just taken the ball early on and just ran with it against the Orlando Magic. LaMelo's shot to me seemed like it was short a good portion of it. Not only that game, but the Miami game. So if he would have been taking the majority of shots he wanted to take, if his legs weren't there, he just would have missed all of them any damn way. I don't know if that's necessarily what turns the tide for them. If I'm being honest with you, I think they were at a real size disadvantage against the Orlando Magic. Something that I'm kind of upset at myself for not identifying in my prediction video. Because I know Orlando's huge. Orlando tends to give us trouble. So I know damn well what type of trouble they can give the slight frame of all those Charlotte players. And I just didn't identify that because I was too busy caught in the moment of how bad Orlando looked against both Boston and Miami. So it was one of those situations where it was like, because they look so bad, I was telling myself, hey, they ain't got no chance to beat a Charlotte team that's been whooping everybody from behind the arc. But if they get into their size bag, like they did, there's not too many players on that Charlotte team that can defend them. And I should have seen that. I know better. But I was engaging in the recency bias, and it bit me in my backside. And so that video aged very poorly. So that just is what it is. But I don't think LaMelo having the ball in his hands, as opposed to them running a bunch of plays like he said they did, would have given them the edge that they needed. The edge that they needed to come from outside of that locker room. They need bigger people down there. They just need some 250 guys that can actually stand up, head up. Because as much as energetic as their center position is, they're not very big, man. Moussa Diabaté is, 230? Something like that. He ain't big enough to be banging up against Wendell Carter and Pete Favre and people. And then you look at how Kalkbrenner barely got any minutes, but he's also too skinny to be dealing with those people. They just don't have the size, man. Brandon Miller's slight. LaMelo Ball is slight. Grant Williams is undersized. They're not using Tijon Salon, and he's not able to deal with that size necessarily as of yet either. He's not a physical player. He's a big player, but he's not a physical player. He's more of a jump shooter, so they just don't really have the personnel to deal with Orlando if Orlando wants to get into that physical style that they engaged in. And when you couple that with the understanding that they removed the time, the minutes restriction on Franz Wagner, and then you would have him on the floor more, and you couple the motivation factor of how embarrassed they must be. An Orlando team that's not usually talked about by national media got on national television on one of the biggest stages and really, really looked bad. So they came back looking to prove themselves with that extra opportunity that they had to save their season. And they came in with an intention of leaning into their strengths, quite literally strengths, and pushed around a Charlotte team that just didn't have the personnel to really deal with that. And so Charlotte was just in a real tough position because when you got bigger people to try to deal with and they decide they're going to put their shoulder down, now you're at the mercy of the whistle. And if the whistle don't blow and they're able to rough you up, it just is what it is. And so Charlotte has 2 first-round picks, one of which is a lottery pick, no telling how it's going to land. I would suggest they grab 2 big people. That's what I would suggest they do. They should be targeting forwards or centers in this draft. If for some reason they're able to put 2 of those Michigan guys on the Charlotte Hornets in this draft, I think that would be a home run. 2 of them 3 Michigan guys. I don't know which 2. But if they can get them 2 or 3 of them, that would be good. Because as I've done homework on all 3 of those players at this point, that's exactly what Charlotte needs. They need to use their picks on big people who can defend, who can shot block, who are going to be about 250, or a 7'3" guy who's going to give them a size advantage. They need that piece. If they would have had that piece against Orlando, or those pieces against Orlando, I think it could have made a difference for certain. So that's the thing about the Charlotte Hornets. I just don't think they're big enough to deal with the physicality, and I think that's something they're going to need to address in the offseason. Being a jump shooting team is too cool until those jump shots ain't falling no more. Then all of a sudden, you just got to work with whatever else you can muster up. And if you don't have nothing else, then you can't do nothing else. And that's what happened. So, yeah, I do agree in listening to people talk about the Orlando Magic, that they could use a scoring guard. Now that I've gotten a chance to look at them, I like Jalen Suggs, but he's not necessarily the leading guard that this roster needs. They need a scorer. They need somebody who's going to look to get their own, create for themselves and others. Jalen Suggs' defense is excellent to be able to opt into, but you need somebody that can create. And I don't see that piece on their roster right now, and they can address that in the draft, I think. I think they have a pick. Maybe they don't, actually. Maybe they need to address that in the offseason with free agency. I don't know, but getting that piece, I think, will help P5 and Franz Wagner a lot. I definitely agree with all the analysts that have been stating that, and I've heard quite a few of them say that very thing. And I see the same thing y'all do. They need that creator. They need that scorer at that point guard spot. Somebody who can drop 30. Somebody who can break somebody off a dribble. Somebody who's going to get to the line about 9-10 times a game. That dude would help them a lot. So, but he has to be able to stretch the floor. If he's a subpar shooter, I don't think it works. But if he's a good enough shooter, a Kobe White type of dude, I think that could really help them a lot, man. So I don't know if Kobe White would be willing to leave Charlotte to go to Orlando, but I can tell him he has a big role if he does. He don't have to play off the bench. And so that might be the way. That might be the way. So those are things I'm thinking about. What else? Talked about my Lakers already. You can check out the video I made from the Lakers. Both last night I did a pre-series video rather. I didn't make a prediction. I refused to for my own team. And I did a video earlier today, just about a 10-minute video, talking about just how much I think the Lakers actually do have a shot at extending the series based on the deficiencies, the natural-born deficiencies of this Rockets roster without Fred VanVleet. I'm just not a believer in it at all. I'm not a believer in that roster. So we'll take that for what it's worth. We'll see how that goes. What else, man? I was doing some reflecting on previous drafts. Just getting a look at just draft all the way back to I think I stayed up to 2 in the morning, almost an hour and a half, 2 hours, just looking at old drafts results. Starting with last year's draft, all the way dating back to I think 94. And trying to find some consistencies, trying to get a loose notion of just how many of the players in these drafts have made it, how many of them had good careers, where a lot of the good stuff was found in these various drafts. There were a couple drafts, not too many, where you found more lasting players in the second round than you did in the first. When you look back on some of the results of some of these guys' careers, I said, man, this second round was better than the first round in in maybe one or two of those drafts. I thought that was interesting. A good majority of the players that are drafted every year do not stick. They don't stick. What I am curious about as it pertains to how I should view this year's draft is how to process the odds of what's in front of me versus the data that is behind us in regards to every draft that's been done. Because when I look at the majority of this draft, I think that there could be a higher ratio maybe than ever that the players in this draft have nice long NBA careers. And I don't know if that just comes from just believing in the homework that I'm doing in all these players and what they're capable of, or if it's me not taking into account what contributed to why players didn't stick in this league, and it may not have been necessarily because they weren't able to showcase that they could play. It just means that they didn't have the right path or ran into injuries. Circumstances outside of their control may have kept them from being able to make it in the NBA. As to say, if I'm looking at things correctly, then maybe I should just take into account that a lot of these dudes may not make it, and it ain't because I'm not seeing what I'm seeing in them, but more so it's because the circumstances may arrive outside of their control that make it so that their careers don't take the path that they hope to take. And so I'm trying to form a opinion or a synopsis about just how to project who's going to make it, how much I should trust myself in what it is that I see. But when I look back on players, since I've been doing this homework thing, when I look back on players that I choose, that I say I like, players, regardless of where they are in the draft, if I say, that's my guy in this draft, I like this guy, I like that guy, I've learned that some of the players that I thought that were going to be successful ended up being very successful. So what I took from that data was that I can trust myself. This pertains to saying, if I see something that I think works, the ratio of it working isn't bad for me. Just over the last 4 or 5 drafts when I really did homework, most of the guys that I liked have gone on to have good careers or bigger roles than what they were projected to, or outplayed their draft position. Some of my guys, I think of a guy like Maxime Renaud, was somebody that I liked a lot, that was projected to go in the second round, who's been a top probably 15 rookie this year with a big opportunity in Sacramento. I told people they should have taken him in the first round. They let him fall to the second round, and he's been as good as I told y'all he was going to be. That's one of several examples like that. And so there's a couple guys that I liked that didn't work out as of yet. Because I'm not 100%. But the good majority of the guys that I liked over the course of the last several drafts, they've stuck. They've done well. People I told people to take sooner than they were expected to be taken, they should have been taken sooner. So that is a real thing. And also guys that I didn't like not working, the ratio ain't bad there either. It pertains to what I've learned from the draft data that I did homework on. Some of the dudes that I said, don't trust them, they're not going to work out, some of them did not work out. And I was wrong in a couple of those too, for certain. So, just learning how much I should trust myself, trying to understand how much I should believe in this draft class, because I do, more so than any of the others I've done homework on. A lot more, actually. But there are a couple players in this draft that I have a gut feeling about one way or another. And we'll see how it plays out. There's a couple guys that people like a lot that I don't think should be valued that high. And I'm finding out there may be a guy or two that is projected to go in the 20s that I think is going to have much better careers than a lot of them people at the top of the, near the 10, 11, 12 spot. Who I think, if I'm following my gut, I take at 12, I take at 11. So that's something that I'm really starting to believe. The more and more I dig deeper into this draft, the more I think there may be some gems in the 20s. And there's some of them dudes that people want to go in 10, 11, 12 range. They ain't about to be much. They not about to be much. And so that's just that's what it really was about for me last night. I was just trying to figure out how much I should trust that. How much did the data tell me I should trust that? And the data tells me I should, basically. I just think I know what the NBA needs. I think I know where the NBA is headed. I think I've been able to roughly understand what's being funneled into the NBA each draft, and how one needs to react to what's to come if they're going to stay current. I think I have a good scope for that type of thing. And I think that's what the data was essentially telling us that I do. So what I'm telling people to look out for in regards to this next wave of players that are coming to the NBA, what you got to understand now is there's a lot of these 250 dudes, guys that are 240, 250 pounds, 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", 250. It's a lot of them dudes coming into the league now, man. Y'all got to look out for those people. They're big. They're hefty. And you need to be able to guard them or you're going to get Charlotted. You're going to get Charlotted. That's the next wave. Not too many 7-footers, not as many as you would think. But wide body linebacking athletes are coming. And you had better have weight. You better have some weight on your roster or you're going to have trouble dealing with these people. And it's going to be tricky because you don't want all of your teams to look like the Toronto Raptors where you have like 9 of those guys and not much anything else. But you do want to have a good amount of those players so that you can match up with the Torontos, with the Orlandos, any other team that looks to do that going forward. So that's the next wave. And as I've said on this camera several times this year in regards to this draft, some of these guards, man, I saw a statement that said the guard position in this draft is going to change the guard position in the future. You know, this is the wave of guards. It's just about to change the world. No, I don't think so, dog. I really don't think so. I really don't think so. I think Darren Peterson is an amazing guard. He may be the best guard in the NBA in 3 or 4 years, if I'm being honest with everybody and what type of talent I think he actually has. He might be the best guard of them all. But that doesn't mean that this is the draft of the guard. It's not, in my opinion, at all that. It's the draft of the 250 guy. Heavy, power forward, push you around. This is that draft. Now that I've done more homework on I've almost completed all of my first round stuff. That's what I gathered. If you need to address size to that degree, you're going to be able to find that player in this draft. Some of them guards, my prediction, some of them get lost in the fold. Maybe they stand out and some of the guards that have been drafted the last several years start to fade. I don't know. But this is not a situation where I think the NBA is lacking for guards. As to where there's just going to be an abundance of playing time for all these damn guards that everybody likes. It's not going to be an abundance of playing time for these people, man. As we talked about, trying to assess what allows for people to be successful. Opportunities. It's only 30 teams. Some of these teams, coaches don't play any of their bench. Sometimes these coaches don't play any of these young guys and they don't develop properly. That's why a lot of these drafts have a good portion of players not developing into anything. It's because there's not an abundance of opportunities so that they can. And so what one must be able to do is identify where ample opportunity meets individual player potential and where it does not, and come to their conclusions based on that variable amongst others, but not absent of that variable. And that's ultimately what I'm getting people to understand. These guards, bro, there's not a lot of spots for these guards. A lot of your teams already have guards. Yeah, you got the Orlandos that could use 1 or 2, or maybe Atlanta who could use a leading guard. And if these players that fit that description land in those spots, then there could be an abundance of opportunity and a path to success. But that's not how the draft tends to go. A lot of these GMs, they don't draft for fit, and so as a result, what becomes present is the absence of opportunity, because fit matters for these players to potentially make it. So I see players that have come and gone in the recent drafts that I thought were going to be pretty good and never got opportunities. The Lakers had 2 of them on their roster just a minute ago, and Nick Smith and Kobe Buffkin. These guys were drafted fairly high, supposed to be leading guards. They had the potential. It looked like they could be leading guards. The absence of opportunity was present, and as a result, those guys haven't really turned into anything as of yet, and don't look like they have a path to turn into anything anytime soon. They needed to be in the right spot with the right amount of rope for them to make mistakes and still keep their jobs in order for what it is that they were drafted to be to manifest. A lot of these teams that drafted them never even had that to present to them. up going wrong in a lot of these drafts is poor GMing. It ain't poor scouting. It ain't bad players. It's GMs that make whatever decisions off of their gut that don't take into account the possibility of presenting opportunities that can effectively allow for these kids to play up the draft position that they're taking in. And so as I assess all of this, I just say that there could be a potential of more of the same, because history tells us that's what's been going on for the last 20 years, 30 years, to be honest with you. When I think about what Minnesota did when Steph Curry was on the board, they didn't even need a point guard. They took two of them with two of their first 10 picks and left Steph Curry on the board. Took Rubio and Malachi Flynn, or Michael Flynn, whatever Flynn, I don't remember his first name, but they took two guards and neither of them was named Steph Curry, man. And they didn't even have a need for guard. That's the cold part. They didn't even need a guard when they did it. And so these are the type of things that GMs are potentially going to do that just set a lot of prospects on the path to failure, man. They are not going to even get an opportunity to display themselves as great basketball players in good situations, because those good situations will not be there. And so they got to be great basketball players in limited situations, and a lot of players don't know how to showcase them. 19 to 20-year-olds don't know how to showcase themselves in those circumstances. So a lot of this is foreseeable, but these owners got to hire people that are smart enough to foresee these things and understand what opportunities they have versus what their choice in players would be. You know, bringing themselves things that they can actually utilize and having a clear path to creating those opportunities that may not necessarily be present on draft day. A clear, unavoidable path to creating those opportunities. Just like what Portland did with the center position. When they drafted Young Hansen and reached for him, it didn't look like they had a path, but they knew that they were going to be able to shave off the right amount of centers to create that path. So now that they have it, it all ends with Young having an opportunity in the future. But if they didn't have a path to moving on from them centers, there'd be no way for that pick to make any damn sense going forward, because you would never be able to play enough for it to do so. So that's where the calculus is for me. It's not as much with the players and how good I think they potentially could be. This draft is full of players that if they land in the right situation with the right amount of rope to make mistakes and grow from them, they can all be good, long NBA players. I haven't seen one prospect in this draft, not one, that I legitimately think should be left on the board. Not one. Even the guys that I don't like that much are good enough to take in the second round and probably will fit somewhere if those situations allow for them to do so. But there are players in this draft that if they land in the wrong situation, they're going to disappear. And some of that is foreseeable now. And some of those players are in the top 15. And it's because they're likely projected, based on how things are set up, to land in log jams, to land in situations where coaches ain't going to play them. You understand what I'm saying? Or some of them have injury history. And that is a real thing as well. You got to take into account guys not being able to develop within a reasonable amount of time, and the likelihood that you're going to move on from them if that is the case before they're able to develop fully. And if they have injury issues that could derail their development, and you couple that with the absence of opportunity in place with these situations, then you can clearly foresee where something is about to be a failure before it gets started. And again, the absence of that foresight or that ability to identify that data along with everything else people are assessing will make it so that they make bad choices in the draft. And so that's ultimately what I see there. The need for expansion is ever clear to me for the guard position. And as long as people are not assessing that a lot of these guards are just not going to get the opportunities, they're going to bring these guards to their situations. and they're not going to have the opportunities to showcase him properly, to play into that draft range that they were projected to land in. So, yeah, I just think with me understanding that, if I'm in control of a team that has a good guard situation going for himself and could use some forwards or use a big, I'm going to take a big over whatever that guard is, even if I love him in this draft. Unless his name is Darren Peterson. Pretty much. Unless his name is Darren Peterson. Because forwards are more productive in this league. Centers are more needed in this league. Height, length, and size is going to be something you need to react to going forward. And guards who haven't had opportunities, who still need to develop, are stuck in situations where you can pluck them and play up their value based on how low their value is at this point, being in those situations. You can find you a Kobe Buffkin in the undrafted market. I mean, in the free agency market right now. You know what I'm saying? Guys that were just taken 5 minutes ago. Some of these draft picks in this year's draft at 21, 20 years old, 22 years old, same damn age as some of them guys. These guys decided to stay in school. Those guys came out early into situations that didn't work for them. What's the difference between this guy and that guy? And that's what you're going to have to assess. So you can tell me a Phylon is going to be awesome and he could turn into Allen Iverson or something like that. That's cool. Maybe you see that. But you told me the same thing about Kobe Buffkin. You know what I'm saying? Like, you told me the same thing about Nick Smith. And so it's like, I don't think there's enough spots for all these damn guards any damn way. So, like, for me, I just like, man, I'm not really interested in guards. That doesn't mean that I'm right. I could very easily be leaving a guard on the table that's going to be Allen Iverson while I'm assessing things this way. There's no perfect science to this. But what I can tell you is there is a certain absence of opportunities for guards and a certain absence of need for guards based on it not being a scarcity of guards already in the league and hovering around the league hoping to get opportunities. But there is an absence of length. There isn't necessarily an abundance of 250 dudes. There isn't necessarily an abundance of centers, but some of the best and most productive players in the league are centers that you're going to have to react to. So it's like, I mean, if you don't already have that in place, why are you drafting a Phylon when you need a damn center to react to Wemby, Jokic, Sengun, and Joel? You know what I'm saying? Like, so that's the logic I'm coming into this with. After doing more homework on this draft, being more intentional on understanding the prospects of this draft than I ever have, I just walk away saying, I'm not in love with the guard spot in this draft right now, man. These some cool guards. And if there were a need for some of these people, I would feel a lot better about them. But as far as me taking these guys with a 10th lottery, 10th pick, a 9th, 8th pick, taking guard, if they don't have a certain like it factor that blows me away, I'm leaving them on the board, man. They're going to be available in the 20s and 30s and in the second round. Because I'm telling you, there's the guard that I did homework on in the second round and some of these dudes in the back of that first round, I didn't see much of a difference between them and some of the dudes at the top of this draft in their position. I didn't see much of a difference. Not really. One shoots a little better. I think what people are going for a lot of times in this draft, and call me stupid for not being impressed by this, but I think they're looking at guys who scored 40 points in a random game in college and saying, okay, because he's able to produce at that level, that makes him more important than that guy in the pack of the draft. I think it just comes down to guys being able to hit more shots in a random game that they're able to reflect upon. That's what I'm seeing. Why do we like this guy? Because he went for 40 against Michigan. I mean, that is a reasonable indicator that a guy could be special. It is a reasonable indicator that a guy plays at a high enough level to be in the NBA. But I promise you, Kobe Buffkin could go for 40 against those same people right now. Nick Smith could go for 40 against those same people right now. You see what I'm saying? When it comes to getting into the NBA, and you start talking about what's valuable on your team 2 years from now, and you're trying to make trades, these little guards getting waved all over the damn league and sent down to the G League left and right, and these forwards, when they come in the game, are doing enough to at least rebound and score in the interior to get double-doubles, to where they're a bit more valuable just in general because of that type of stuff. You ain't gonna remember that so-and-so went for 40 in college 2 years ago, 3 years ago. You're not gonna even remember that. And that is what I'm working with. That's how I'm thinking. That's what I'm looking at. So I just want people to know where I'm at. This is what I've been studying. So I've been pouring a good portion of my time into is this draft. And just like I like to be prepared. I like to know what's coming. I like to know what I need to react to as an NBA fan. What the heck could be coming to this league based on this draft, bringing in 50 players. You know, because a lot of times people don't assess any of that, or they don't expect that these coaches are going to play these young players. So it's not like they are reacting to what's coming. But that ain't how I'm thinking. That ain't how I'm thinking. You got to react immediately. Get ahead of what's coming your way. You don't want to be blown out by 40 because you didn't have this type of foresight when you were constructing your roster. Or get Charlotte in it. Video 44. Thank you all for watching. I'm out.